Hey everyone, and welcome to the council. I am that crypto chick, joined as usual by the Block Magi and Crypto Insider X. Today's episode is a bit of a special one. We had the privilege of chatting with Matan Field, the CEO of DAOstack, and Block Magi. I think you really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed talking to people like Matan. Matan's one of the he's kind of like one of the leading lights within our crypto universe, let's call it. And this guy is revered across by all the scientists within crypto. He's a leading light and a leading. I really enjoyed the conversation with Matan. Matan is a science. He's a real scientist. He's a real head, and I really enjoyed that interaction. But the thing about Matan is he is he's one of the leading lights with knowledge on DAOs. If you guys look him up, you can see several TED talks that he's done on the subject. When we come to talking about his project being DAOstack, people will probably thinking, what is DAOstack? Now, DAOstack itself is an operational stack for DAOs. It's made up of a framework of different parts. One of them is the Arc Solidity framework. Another part of it is Arc JavaScript libraries and references. And then there's the protocol layers as well. These parts make up the DAOstack itself, which Matan will go into. But yeah, I can speak about a DAOstack, but then people are probably going to ask, what is a DAO? Unless you've got some earlier knowledge of cryptocurrencies from let's say a few years ago, you may have come across DAO-based cryptos like Augur and Aragon. But to explain, the basic way that I can explain what a DAO is a DAO is seen as a decentralized autonomous organization. Now, this is an organization that's run through rules encoded as smart contracts or computer programs. And so DAOs are usually synonymous with Ethereum, Ethereum being based on smart contracts. But Matan will go into that further.
Well, and we have to mention that it's not just Matan that's part of this team. This is really a superstar team.
Without a shadow of doubt, this is a superstar team. I mean, if you research the team behind this project, we've got people here who have their experience and their knowledge and their placing in academia. We're talking about people who really are that we're like stellar scientists. People. The two main members of the team, Matan and Levi, are both have their doctorates in physics.
Doesn't he study black holes or something?
That's right, and that's right. One of them is someone who studies intensely black holes and black hole phenomena.
Well, we know they have a solid team, but we didn't talk to Matan about the token metrics, so why don't we refer to you, Crypto Insider X? Tell us about the token metrics for DAOstack.
Yeah, the token metric. I don't know the crypto metrics, but the token metrics for DAOstack, they're pretty good. The fundraising goal, 30 million. For me, I like anything under 15 million, but there's a sweet spot where I understand obviously everything can't be that low. There has to be funds raised, and some of them it's required. So, 30 million for me is kind of like an area 25, 30, 35 where I still like those numbers. The total token supply of 60 million is great, and the available tokens for sale at 67% almost is really good. So these guys aren't trying to hoard the tokens, and there's always a worry about what happens when the tokens are mainly held by the team, and the public is only given an opportunity to buy 10 or 20% or something of the token. So all of that is great. The token price is $1, but that's partly due to the fact that there's only 60 million tokens, and the fundraising goal is 30 million. So I can't really fault them for that. That's just kind of math and the way it's working out. So token metrics wise, I definitely like what DAOstack has done and how they've set up the project.
Well, like we said off the top, we did interview and talk to Matan Field. I highly recommend everybody listen to this interview. We're just going to throw this out as a Q&A. Listen to the whole thing from beginning to end. You might have to listen to it a couple times because it's pretty intense, but lots of great information on a great project.
Yes, I have two kind of histories, or two trajectories. So one was more the professional one, that I was trained as a theoretical physicist. I did my bachelor in mathematics and physics in the Hebrew University, and then master and PhD in the Weizmann Institute. I did my graduate studies. I did in researching string theories. So that's kind of like where my passion was.
Yeah.
I always tended to the abstract, and then I continue also to postdoc research. And then during that postdoc research, I actually discovered the blockchain and basically quit the academy. The other trajectory was that I was, from a very young age, I think from 18, I was very interested in alternative cooperative structures. So I had this, kind of like sense or feeling that there is a better way to have people organized around shared missions, and that the corporate structure is not optimized. And yeah, it was mainly a thought and, evening discussions with friends. And at some point I decided to found my own, well, not my own, but like my own initiative of a food cooperative in the neighborhood where I lived in Jerusalem. And basically, yeah, so I founded that and kind of like managed, in parallel to doing the PhD, I founded and managed the food cooperative, mostly kind of like to understand how more, I would say, flat structure works, and how efficient or inefficient it is. I also kind of did another project, was a communal garden. And then the third project, so the first two were very successful, and then kind of like gave me more, I would say, hunger for more. So the third project was actually the first technological one. So during the postdoc, I had the idea for a social ride-sharing application, and started to work with some friends about that. And actually, that's what drove me to discover the blockchain. So through that project, I've came to know the blockchain, and that was exactly when Vitalik published his white paper. And basically, I mean, I had all of those ideas about how maybe alternative organization would work, but it was not, it was not concrete. And then suddenly I saw the blockchain, and so it kind of like got together, and I realized that this was, this is technology that is missing, and basically at that point I saw the future of DAOs, and it was so, like, it drove my passion so strongly that a few months after I quit the academy and decided to focus full time just about that, just building platform structure for DAO. It was kind of like mid 2014. Yeah, and that's what I'm doing full time since then for the past 4 years. Designing the protocols or the rules, the games for coordination of large number of people. I think that's by far the greatest challenge in this domain. So I've been worked a lot about that. So my professional background gave me, kind of like the tools to solve that problem, and then years of research on that, and the passion for organization. So together, I think brought me where I am right now. And then in parallel to that, I've also worked a lot during those years about more the questions. I mean, the rules is the greatest, I think, challenge, but then there is also the challenge below the rules, which is the implementation, the smart contracts and all the architecture and all that. And there is also above the rules, the interfaces, the platforms, how a decent interface for coordination of people looks like. So I've been working on this for the past 4 years. DAOstack is the last iteration of that. After doing a first iteration with Backfeed, that was not successful. I mean, it was successful in many ways, but not in the way that we would want it to be. and mostly I felt that I need to partner with a technological partner, and also then kind of like redesign the product itself. And that's what I've done with DAOstack. Finally, I've partnered with I joined forces with Adam Levy, who I met in the academy. He's also a PhD in physics. You mentioned before black holes. He's actually an expert on black holes. And yeah, but he, contrary to myself, he's also a stellar technologist. So he has like over 20 years experience with code and engineering. He's also electrical engineer. And yeah, when we joined forces, it was highly complementary. I brought like very heavy theoretical aspects of DAOs, and he, brought the deep understanding of the core technology of the blockchain. And it was just a really, really good combination. So in the past 16 months, we have been developing basically the DAOstack, which is a stack of layers that provide the infrastructures, the ground for opening, for founding and configuration and operation of DAOs. And yeah, it's ready. We're ready to launch it on the mainnet. We are just now focusing on the token sale for the next 2 weeks until completion, and then we will launch the system on the mainnet. We just don't have right now the attention to play with it, so we are postponing it in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. But it's ready to launch. It's an alpha. I have to say it's an alpha. It's not it's not the full version.
Yeah.
It's any technology, but it's alpha. It's working. It's completed in that sense. And yeah, we're excited to start playing around. It's really a new way for large number of people to organize together, to self-organize. So what do we mean by that? A company is just a game, right? A company is a game to organize people. So there are rules in that game. In the case of a company, the rules are enforced by legal agreements, and the rules dictate how different people play together, who says what, and who follows what, and who gets incentives such and such, and that is constructed in a way that's supposed to optimize their coordination, so that their sum is bigger than their parts, right? And that's great, and that's more or less drove us to where we are at, humanity-wise. The problem with those organizations is that, with those structures, is that they are becoming less and less effective as they grow, as they scale up. So, because they rely on some notion of central coordination, central management, the larger your organization, on one hand, the ratio between decision-making capacity and size and number of agents is going down and down and down, and then you have less and less effectivity. On the other hand, there's just more and more agents, and the farther you are in that circle, the farther you are from the center of interests, and the less you are attached to this organization, really. And the result of that is that organization, as they grow, they become less agile. They have very, very, very hard time in innovation, a lot more wastefulness, more friction, more heaviness, rigidity. So generally, and that's true for any organization, they become less effective as they grow. Now, as long as as long as you need to solve problems that 100 people can solve, that's not a big deal. But what if you want to solve problems that 1 million people can solve? You need 1 million people to solve them. And more so than what you need is also what you have. Like, we're not used to the situation. Like right now we have projects on the blockchain space. They have billions of dollars and tens of thousands of developers. So you are not limited in capital. You're not limited in human resource. You are truly limited for the first time in history. You are truly limited by decision-making capacity for further innovation. So if you want to grow that, so that's what a DAO is. A DAO is a way for a large number of people to coordinate, and the only way for effectively coordinating large number of people is that they are indirectly coordinated. It's not that someone is telling those people do that and those people do that. That's direct coordination. It's a centralized direct coordination, and rather in a DAO it's a decentralized indirect coordination. So that the coordination is merely materialized by code on the blockchain and crypto economic incentives that are produced by that code. So for example, the blockchain actually is the first example of a DAO in some sense, or a prototype of a DAO. There is some code running, on computer of everyone. And if you run that software, you get such and such tokens. And if you understand the business cycle of that tokens, you understand at some point they will have value, at some point that value will increase, and thus you have incentive to run that software. And suddenly, a lot of people around the world are running this kind of like weird software, and you get emergent phenomena that we call the blockchain. So the same thing. You can mimic the same thing for a general organization if you just align incentive correctly and incentivizing people to partner and to cooperate about something. Suddenly, this emergent phenomenon of people building stuff together will just happen, and that's a DAO. So it's a spontaneous, indirect coordination of large number of people that is managed by code and crypto-economic incentives. And DAOstack is this technological stack to adapt to the technological stack to allow for DAOs, to enable DAOs. So at the core of it, if you really touch the core, the heart of it is that crypto-economic game that makes people cooperate. So we use the blockchain to engineer those crypto-economic games that incentivize people to cooperate spontaneously. And this is a big thing. It's a big deal. I mean, the idea is simple, but the implementation is pretty hard. Like, how do you make the game, for example, decentralized? How you make the game such that people cannot easily, corrupt, power is corrupting, so not easily pulling power to a centralized point. How do you make the game to be scalable? That's the hardest question. Like, how do you make the game such that you can enlarge the number of participants to millions and still be effective? How do you make the game resilient so that since everything is open, anyone can participate, so people can manipulate the system and act from self-interest? How do you design the game such that it's sensitive to this kind of like manipulations? So these are the core challenges that we are believing that we have the solution for, and that's what DAOstack is. So it's a game. It's incentive games coded on the blockchain to allow for large scale coordination. Said that, the DAOstack is much more than that. So that's the core, that's the heart. But really, firstly, the DAOstack it's a stack. It's a stack of layers, 1, 2, 3, 4. At the bottom of the stack, there is a completely general framework on the blockchain for governance systems. So when I say framework, I mean it's kind of like the letters out of which you can build any governance system, any sentences. And then there are also shared curated databases that the collectives can play with in order to track information effectively. There is a JavaScript API layer, we call it. So the bottom layer we call the Arc. Then the databases are called the archives, and then the JavaScript layer is called the ArcJS. And it's basically a translator, a bridge from Solidity, from the blockchain of Ethereum into JavaScript that a lot of developers are familiar with, that allows young front-end developers to build collaborative applications without the need to know and understand the blockchain so much. And then finally, there is the application layer. So on top of the DAOstack, just as on top of the HTTP protocol, the internet protocol, you can develop many web applications. In the same way here, on top of the DAOstack, you could develop many different collaborative applications, whether it's between open source developers collaborating about building a product, or between journalists that are building a newspaper, or between insurance that are building decentralized insurance, or investors or whatnot. Those different interfaces, different collaborative applications will be able to connect to the same stack, and by that being also interoperable with each other. So right now, I think Ethereum is the only viable platform for this. So you have other technologies. So firstly, if you have other blockchains that are Solidity compatible, it's almost instantly you can copy paste the technology on other blockchains. And then if you have non-Solidity technologies, blockchains that are not compatible with the EVM, with the Ethereum virtual machine, you can re-implement the same architecture on those new technologies. And then you also want to use inter-blockchain solutions such as Polkadot, Cosmos, etc., in order to connect those architecture of DAOstack on different blockchains, and eventually to have a fully blockchain agnostic architecture. But I predict that that's at least 2 years ahead of us. If we have a system a tool that can allow a large number of people to agree about certain things. Let's agree about what is contributional, what contributes value to ourselves, to the ecosystem. So on top of the stack, we are founding, if you want, the first DAO, which we call the Genesis DAO, and that DAO will manage the capital both in terms of Gen tokens, so the tokens of the DAOstack project, a certain number of them, and then also in terms of the capital that is raised in the token sale, like actually majority of that capital, and that vehicle would be able to support and possibly invest in projects and contributions that are contributing value to the ecosystem, whether it is just missions of developers and bug bounties and things like that, or whether it's substantial projects that either build components of the stack, such as ourselves, but other projects, or projects that build interfaces, integrate interfaces and applications on top of the stack, or projects that simply build DAOs on top of the stack. So it's like kind of like early users. So you can think of this as an incubation fund that support and possibly invests in contributions and in projects, but specifically those who are also enhancing the ecosystem, the DAO ecosystem around the DAOstack project. So this is basically, and yeah, in particular, anyone that will be, the idea is to use, we are arguing to build here sort of like perpetuum mobile, right? Like a machine that can deploy large number of capital into large number of human resources and turn them into a very effective product very rapidly. So we want to deploy that firstly on ourselves. It's good for two reasons. It shows that it works, and then if it works, it makes us grow much faster. So usually I say there are three magical elements in the stack. So one is the horizontal arc, so the modular, the letters from which you can build any governance system. Then the vertical stack, which is the reason, the fact that you have multiple layers that allows you easily to integrate with that. And then the third element, the secret sauce, is the holographic consensus, and it's really critical element. So the thing is that there is a core paradox here that we are all familiar with that paradox, just under different names. So the core paradox is that consensus. It's funny because we all the time speak about consensus and we want to scale things up, but secretly consensus is not scalable by definition. By definition, consensus means that everyone look at everything, and that's not scalable. It's not scalable for machine. It's much, much more severely not scalable for human beings. Like you cannot expect 1 million people to look at each and every decisions and reach a consensus. It's impossible. So there is a core paradox between consensus and scalability, and the question: how do you come about that? How do you solve that? So in the blockchain space, the primary solution is called off-chain computations, off-chain solutions. So this is the same thing. It's the same in the sense that it's very analogous, and we call it holographic consensus. The idea is that you are inventing crypto economic gains that are allowing you, or not you, allowing anyone or any set of people to make decisions without the need for everyone to look at everything. So it allows small groups of people to take decisions on behalf of everyone, but with these crypto economic gains, it guarantees that those decisions cannot be far from the truth. And the truth is the thing that would be decided upon if everyone would look about it. So although your decisions are made locally, and just because of that they are scalable, still you are guaranteed that you cannot get too far from the truth. You cannot get too far from the consensus. And the economic games is basically the games to identify this distance, identify mismatches, and turning them into economic profit. So if you identify a mismatch, if you identify an undervalued proposal or an overvalued proposal, you can stake against that. You can say, well, I'm predicting that proposal over here is undervalued right now, and I'm willing to put $200 to say that that this proposal will actually be a good one, will pass in that DAO if enough people look at it. And vice versa. You can say, okay, this proposal I think is overestimated. I think the DAO will never approve that. And by having that free market of predictors, you're significantly increasing the signal and the efficiency of the navigation of collective attention around the good or bad proposals. And by that, you're enabling, again, decision making at the edges by small groups, but in a way that is guaranteed economically to be not too far from the truth. Because the farther it is from the truth, the more someone can make profit out of identifying and signaling that mismatch. The idea of holographic consensus beyond, it's not really a model, it's a concept. Once you understand the concept, you can design different protocols that implement the concept, just as much as if you understand the concept of blockchain, you can come up with 20 different blockchain protocols. And likewise for off-chain computations. Once you understand the logic behind off-chain solutions, you can come up with infinitely many different off-chain solutions. So in the same way, holographic consensus is a concept. Right now we have the first implementation of that concept, in which proposals that are anyone can come up with any proposal, and initially that proposal by default requires the attention of the majority to be approved. However, people can then start playing that game and predict that certain proposals are underestimated. And once a proposal is being predicted to be a good proposal, only then it opens up for a narrow time window at which voters can focus their attention around that proposal and basically approve or disapprove the proposal. And then if eventually a proposal that was predicted to be successful passes, then all of those people who predicted that it was successful will make profits, will benefit out of it. And vice versa. If it didn't pass, they will lose their stake. So by that, in fact, it's mimicking what happens in the economy, the regular economy. So in the regular economy, if you are an investor or trader or arbitrator, and you identify an inefficiency in the market, so when you invest in a stock, in some sense, you can think of it as identifying the inefficiency in the market. You think that stock can go up, and you are putting your stake on it. And if you're right, you're making profits, and vice versa. So at the end of the day, all of us agents in the market, we are providing signals. We are making predictions about the economic potential of things. We are putting stake on those predictions. We are being compensated for being right. We are being punished for being wrong. But on the way, we are producing signals that then the economy reorganized. Here it's the same thing, but about prediction about social predictions. So whether certain crowd will like or not like a certain proposal. And the difference is that we have two systems: the system of predictions, which is purely economic, and the system of governance, which is purely meritocratic. And the reason why you have to have those two systems is because, so the problem is that purely economic systems are very efficient and very scalable, but they are very also manipulable. You can manipulate economic systems, and they are very bad in creating coherence around certain specific missions. And governance bodies, such as companies, they are very, very good in being unmanipulable relatively, and very good in creating coherence around certain missions, but they are very bad in getting scalability and efficiency as markets. So you need those two systems to balance each other, and by that produce large scalable organizations. There are various ways to scale up and not lose efficiency. Let me mention a few. So firstly, I didn't mention that there is also a matter of, I call it complexification or fractalization, or compositionality, if you want, which is actually very well known from the regular legacy organization structure. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that you wouldn't expect a Samsung to be one single company with one structure, right? Samsung is made of 80 companies that made of 80 divisions, that made of 80 departments, and so on and so forth. and eventually you have this kind of like fractal structure. So that's definitely something you need to take into account. So when you would have a DAO of 1 million people, it will not be one DAO. It will be like a DAO, the agent of which are companies, the agent of which are companies, the agent of which are companies, etc. So a fractal structure. So that's one thing. But said that, you can still ask the question, how large I can get one single company with one governance system? How can I extend it and still stay efficient? And that's where holographic consensus is coming. It's more dynamic in the sense that inside that one company, you can get, you don't need everyone to look at everything. Because if you had everyone looking at everything, you'd be able to have maybe 50 people, maybe 20 people, and getting like 2 decisions a day. What if you want to have 5,000 people in that circle and get 100 decisions a day, or maybe 1,000 decisions a day? That's impossible that everyone will look at everything. So that prediction games is coming in and allowing maybe 100 people to get a decision done for 5,000 people circle, but in a way that this can be not too far from what the 5,000 would actually say. Because if people believe that it's too far, they will instantly place a stake against it and basically block those decisions from happening, and vice versa. If a decision of 100 people is not looked at, is underestimated, someone will identify that because it will make profit out of that, and that will raise it into the collective attention, and then he will make profit from once it's being voted on by the collective attention and approved. It will make profit of that. So these are two independent way to scale up, and there are a few more tricks, but these are the core. These are the core tricks for scalability. We are speaking with a lot of partners, and right now we are mostly focused on the sales. So there is a big pipeline that is waiting, but we've closed various partnerships with. I would say, I think the most significant of which is Gnosis, the prediction market company. They are launching their decentralized exchange literally next month, and part of the engine, the collective decision-making engine of that exchange, will be integrated from the stack. That's one use case. Secondly, they have their own token pool, very large token pool that they want to distribute to developers that will develop applications on top of the Gnosis platform. And that distribution process will actually occur on Alchemy. Our native application, which is, maybe I should mention, it's like the first native application of the stack, which we've built, and basically allowing for crowd allocation of resources. So that's exactly the point. I mean, it's exactly what I mentioned, that you have projects like Gnosis that have hundreds of millions in capital, and then maybe thousands of developers, and the limiting factor is actually just putting them together effectively. So that's what Alchemy does. So that's Gnosis. We've partnered with Sapien, which is a social news platform, recently raised their pre-sale with 8 digits in dollars, and they are building their entire collective decision-making engine for curation of articles and more will be with a stack. We've partnered with Menlo One, which is a platform for investment and curation of investments, and again, the collective decision-making process will be integrated with a stack. We've partnered with Endor, which is a prediction engine, and we'll have some cross integrations between their engine and ours. Who else? I'm forgetting here. Yeah, there are many more in the pipeline that we're speaking with. First area we chose to focus on was the collaboration itself, and specifically for blockchain projects, and that's why we built Alchemy, because we see there is a real need there. There is a real need of a lot of capital and a lot of human resources that just are asking for effective deployment, and that's exactly what we're doing it with Alchemy and Gnosis and other projects. There are a few other very interesting use cases I think that have like immediate consequences. If you want, I can throw out ideas, but I mean, an investment DAO, for example, is something that a lot of investors have been spoken with us, and already a few would make a move. So that's a use case, I think, which has a lot of interest around it. Of course, decentralized insurance, we were in touch with with these companies as well. News, all of the curation of news, I think it's a heavy problem. That's why we partner with Sapien. There are more. I think it's a very hot topic. And also, speaking about curation, so one use case that I predict will be very important and very quick will be curation of actually ICOs. So that's like one of the hardest problem today in the space. You have hundreds of ICO listing websites, but to be honest, none of them works well because they are centralized and corruptible. So there is no clear cut between, the quality. There is a bad mixture between quality and business. And anyone that is in the industry knows that well and understands that. And I bet that the decentralized ICO listing website will rack them all. And with the DAOstack, building a decentralized ICO lister is actually super easy. And that's, I think, one of the killer apps. And also, it's beyond transparency. I mean, it's also the point is that the way that businesses are structured today is built in a way that the interests of the business owner is not very aligned with the interest of his clients. And in ICO listing is so ridiculous. It's obvious. While in a DAO structure, it's by definition defined in a way that there is a much higher mixture and better alignment of interest between the different sectors. So you can actually design it crypto-economically so that there is interest. The interest of the business owner is aligned with the interest of the clients immediately, much more tightly. And because of that, it will produce much more results. But because of that, a lot more people will look there, and a lot of people will curate there. So I think it will be a killer, basically.
So Block Magi, I mean, gosh, you could just feel the passion with Matan, couldn't you?
Yeah, you can. But this is a passion of a man who spent a great proportion of his time dealing with consensus theory in one way or another. I mean, we're here talking about DAOstack in a way in which consensus theorem works in a cooperative in the blockchain. This guy's been studying this prior to coming into cryptocurrencies. I mean, he used what people probably don't know is he formed cooperatives within his native country to provide allocations of food for people. Projects like that, and they use the thinking behind that is exactly the same. It's the basis of the thinking behind his utilization of DAOstack to manage that.
Well, I mean, it definitely gives you confidence knowing that, it wasn't like this project was just developed recently. He's obviously been working in this field for years. His knowledge base is obviously very deep. Crypto Insider X, bullish on this project, excited about this project, not excited?
Yeah, I would say I'm bullish. I'm not overly bullish, but I'm definitely excited. A lot of people use bullish anytime they like a project.
True.
I think there's like levels to excitement, right?
Yeah.
I do like the project. I like the team. I like the direction, and I think that there's a lot of potential. And I would say I'm like on a bullish scale, if you want to call it that.
Sure, we can.
10 being the most bullish, I'm probably around. I'd say around a 7, and that's like a bullish scale. So like 1 is still like, oh yeah, I'm bullish. It's not like 1 isn't like I don't like it. It's 1 like okay, so I'd say it's about a 6.57.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for having a listen to our chat and discussion on a DAOstack. Like we always say, this is not investment advice. Do your own research. We are just here to share information and our opinions, and that's all they are. So if you guys have any comments or questions, leave them below, and we'll try to get back to you. And that's it for this episode, and we'll see you next time.